Hey guys, Jason from Critical Dice, and with me today is...
I am Tycho Brahe of Penny Arcade and PAX. I'm also a Memphis Hereward Drawn, CEO of Acquisitions Incorporated. I guess I'm also Jerry Holkins, although these days, for whatever reason, my instinct, whenever I'm in a context where I think branding might be important, is to perforate it, which I think is probably bad business.
Maybe.
I mean, I think that's not strategic. But generally speaking, I refer to myself as Jerriford K. Horcrims.
Your internet friend.
We're internet friend with the sub-appellation. I don't know why, but I can, generally speaking, I'll answer to any one of those three.
Well, typically, I think you probably prefer that to DM Daddy.
Well, I don't appreciate that.
Exactly. So that's why it's...
I don't approach it. Because before you're like, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And it's like, well, he's probably never going to say DM Daddy, so we're probably in a good position.
I spent some time with Kate yesterday, and so I think it transferred somehow.
No, it's her and Amy started this DM Daddy business. But generally speaking, if we're at a C-team signing, I actually sign books as DM Daddy.
Does it cause you physical pain when you do?
No, secretly I like it, but there is definitely a sort of dark nimbus around it. There's something odd about it that unsettles.
A patina of darkness.
Yeah, that is exceedingly well put.
Thank you. I try.
Honestly, you've increased your rank with my faction. You'll be able to exchange these credits for unique gear.
But only in the Acquisitions Incorporated gift shop when it's rebuilt.
That's the optimal scenario.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Rob's going to talk about Acquisitions Incorporated, talk about C-Team, all that kind of stuff. So I've heard you talk before that you've had this story, that the C-Team story, at least in your head for a while, and you've wanted to get it out.
True, but it's not that crazy though. Think about ostensibly you're supposed to ask me questions, and then, right? I mean, I know how this is supposed to operate.
We can flip the script. It's fine.
But tell me, what's your favorite character? Like your favorite character that you've run?
Player?
PC. Yeah.
My PC?
Yeah.
Tiff.
Okay, so
he's a halfling monk because Tiff's a little fight.
I love it. Now, but Tiff. You know a lot about Tiff.
I do.
Right? And you know a lot about Tiff that there's just not an opportunity, in a game, just because we are who we are, right?
Right.
You know a lot about Tiff that's never going to find its way at the table.
That's true.
Just because it can't. There's just going to be certain types of conversations that aren't going to come up. And I think that's true for every person who has a character that they really love.
Right.
So, I mean, it must have been 6 years ago where I talked about Omen's sister.
Yeah.
In a live game at PAX.
Right,
as a throwaway line.
Right, before you tell a secret in the portal and they get sent to hell.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? And
I'm OG, I know.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying that I've always known what Omen's backstory is, but there's no opportunity to tell that story. So, and also there's definitely something unctuous about just holding forth.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to do that. We know instinctively that's wrong, even if we're compelled to do it.
Right.
So, but it turns out that if you can take that story and embroider it in such a way that other people can inhabit it, then you can not only have your cake, but consume the cake. And even though it is consumed, the cake remains.
Right. It's a forever cake.
Yeah.
Right, and basically it turns Omen's secret backstory into
a campaign.
That where other characters they themselves have backstories. And
exactly. So it's a much more embroidered, much more complicated version of the backstory.
Right.
But it's information that in a lot of cases I already knew.
Right.
And so having an opportunity to take a year, functionally speaking, to tell that story was a real treat. And then alongside that, of course, we're learning about these other characters as well and how they fit into that mechanism. I don't know. I really, really enjoyed I enjoy running the C-Team in general, but that was a fun opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that you enjoy it because you wouldn't keep showing up, and I think so many people really do enjoy it. But that's the question I want to ask you: is the story told? Is the original story that was the impetus for the C-Team, has it been told, or are there still lingering particles left?
I would say that there are definitely there's definitely a few questions that you could ask. There's a few things that haven't been answered, but I mean, that story is told. That original story is told as far as I'm going to tell it.
Okay. So if anything else comes out, it's going to be the players.
Yeah. Well, it could be that they do something. Again, I'm not going to. Functionally speaking, I feel like I prevailed on them long enough. I'm not going to volunteer any additional information, but if the campaign goes in certain directions, there's more of that stuff to come out.
Yeah.
Now, with even in the first season, where we went pretty hard on Walnut's backstory, and then in the second season, at the very beginning, we went really hard on Cathrissa's backstory, yes. And now we're going really hard on Rosie's backstory.
Yeah, and not just her backstory, but the backstory of her entire family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and so each of these seasons really has a character anchor. It's just that in the first season, I was the only character in existence really when it was founded, and so
fully developed.
Exactly.
Right.
Now that we know as much as we do about the rest of these characters, I mean they've all earned.
Oh yeah.
They've all earned big arcs, and so, but Walnut's arc isn't complete.
Yeah.
We've just really investigated it, and so now that kind of stuff just comes down to interesting character moments where, like in the case of, if we're going to bring it back to Walnut. So where we're at now is we have to figure out from her perspective. So just for anyone else's use, Walnut is a 62-year-old wood elf whose grove was annihilated by a force that she was too young to understand when it happened.
Right.
And then by the time she came back and tried to figure it out, it was so much more complicated than she couldn't have imagined. And there's a bunch of, relatively sophisticated, not sophisticated because I made it, but sophisticated because...
Intricate.
Yeah, there's a lot of different forces around that. So very early on, she had accomplished what she thought was her primary goal.
Mm-hmm.
But her actual goal, the goal that was inside that was, all right, well, if this grove is destroyed, what's my responsibility to that?
Right.
But the truth is that her grove was destroyed in part because it couldn't survive in the modern world.
Right.
And so if she had a chance to found it again, what would be its founding principles?
Right.
And so that's what we're exploring now, which is really fun.
And that becomes the question, do you change the grove or do you change the world?
Exactly.
If they're mutually exclusive, then one of them has to change.
Yeah, and I think that, in the last, basically there is this remnant of young women. It's a matriarchal society, right. But there's this remnant of young women that are looking to her for answers, and she doesn't always have them. And I think that's precisely the sort of anguish. That's the type of damage I deal characters.
Psychic damage.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously can affect affect the integer. I can go after the hit points if I want to, but I think that if I can arrange events in such a way that, because all these characters are created as manifestations of yourself in some way, even if you don't intend it.
Right, especially if you don't intend it.
Right, and so there is, if we're going to do that, and if we recognize that that's true, then we have an opportunity to have real conversations.
Yeah, and when you do things like that, when you deal that emotional damage, that kind of soul damage, you can't call a cleric to cast a spell for that.
No, exactly.
You have to work that out.
And that's why I specifically seek that sort of I seek that kind of damage out.
Yeah.
But I might have to work toward it for, in the case right here, this campaign's been going on for, this is the third year of the campaign.
Something like that, yeah.
Right? And so some of the, to bring those types of questions to bear, sometimes you have to spend a lot of time inhabiting that character, mm-hmm. and then, creating a world around them that makes enough sense so that when it behaves in this way, it's really communicating the danger of it.
Yeah. Now, I've talked before to Amy and to Kate, and they've expressed this sense. And I think a lot of people feel this way. Yeah, they're
players.
Excellent players, people, humans.
I'm a big fan.
Mammals.
Mm-hmm. Beasts.
They are beasts. But they talk about the kind of the therapy, the natural therapy aspect of playing a collaborative storytelling game like Dungeons and Dragons.
For sure.
And I know that your games can typically be, like we talked about jokingly, that they're very emotional and soul damage, but also very cerebral. Do you find it a therapeutic element, even unintentionally, when you run this game?
No. For me, trying to make sure that my that it's doing what I intend it to do is actually quite difficult.
Okay.
I may need therapy,
but that's not where you're getting it.
as a result of this game and my long labors. But no, it's really, really important to me that it go well. And so whatever therapy is happening like to me, I'm not being improved by it.
It's unperceived and unintentional.
I don't think so.
You mentioned too before that how you kind of get you black out when you DM.
That's quite true.
And I've experienced that too when I've done.
I think it's flow. I mean, have you ever heard about that term?
Yeah, in the drift.
Yeah.
It's like the giant robot.
It's like we're in the robot.
Right.
But no, the idea that there is but the flow state where it's like you're doing exactly what. Like you're thinking and doing at the same time, essentially.
Right. There's not really a past, there's not really a present. You're just right there in the now. And I've had that happen when I've done public speaking things before, where I'm where you have to ask someone when you're done, how was that? And they're like, you don't know? Like, no.
No, I don't know.
I was there.
I don't have any fucking idea.
I know I did something.
Yeah.
But you have to tell me. I don't know.
No, Alyssa, how many times have I asked you? It's like, was that good? Yeah. Is that crazy? Like, is that trash?
No, that's fantastic.
Yes,
yeah. Alyssa's face is like, yeah, boss.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's just true. You spend all this time simulating it, but it's like you don't observe it in that case.
Yeah. When I DM, the kind of way I envision DMing in general and for myself is a way a friend of mine explained it is that it's like a game of hockey, and the best skater on the ice is the referee, because he's skating as fast as all the other players.
Delicious.
He's observing all the moves and the puck, and he's doing it backwards.
Yeah, the whole time.
And so you have to just ready to adjudicate just anything that happens. And so, do you have that experience, or do you kind of envision your DM style a different way?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just very similar to it's like writing, but generally speaking, when I write, it's like I'm completely alone.
Right.
In a room, I have a shawl. You know what I mean? Like it's a very intimate thing, and so then to essentially invite 4 people into your head is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's the thing. So you went from headcanon to the table, and now you've turned it into a book to give to the entire world.
Yeah.
Tell me about that process. That's got to be surreal.
Well, it definitely is surreal. I mean, the main thing, the most surreal thing. So, this is all. Is there a parenthetical of some kind on this video that says that it's from The Descent and all that kind of stuff? So do people know where we are and what we're doing?
We're in LA at D&D Live 2019, The Descent.
But so over in it's like a sort of an expo floor exhibition.
Yeah. There's a lot of really cool people here doing cool things.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I have spoken to them.
Yeah.
But you understand, we have never seen a physical version of the book until today.
Yeah, you were walking around and holding it like it was your child.
It is my child in every real way.
It's like Zeus birthing Athena from the
dead. It's all working.
Yeah.
These metaphors are working. But no, but Kate had actually here's what's funny is that Kate had left our book. This is an unreleased book. Kate left this book in our booth. And by the time I got to it, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I really loved looking at the book. It was great." And I'm like, "Who are you?"
They thought
I don't know who you are. It's
like a coffee table book for people to enjoy.
The event is not open. You are a thief, and the parts of your brain that contain my book, I would like back.
They now belong to you.
They're forfeit. But no, like I said, I've never had a chance to. I mean, obviously, I've seen PDFs. It's nothing.
But it's not the same.
There's no comparison at all. So I was flipping through it, looking at this beast, and just thinking about all the people who work so hard on it. Because really, making the book, before the book was made, we had to build a team.
Right.
And so I'd chosen a couple writers. Up front.
Yeah.
Because they had done really great work for Adventurers League.
Yeah.
On some, and for Wizards directly.
Right.
Doing some, AI tie-in type stuff.
So they had experience with the brand. They're clearly
they're also
great writers.
Yeah, exactly.
And
they murdered it. It was Sean Merwin and Teo Sabadia.
Okay.
But and it's so great to see Teos here at the show. But once we had them, it's like we really needed somebody to do it, like project management. Like that's not. I have ideas,
right,
and I can execute ideas at a very high resolution, very small. Like I can really like stitch things together for very small things.
Right.
But like a book and like scheduling and art orders and no, I mean that's I don't even.
But that's always been the.
I actually know what my limitations are, right?
That's a good thing.
I think it's really good. So I didn't even try, but I definitely knew I wanted to work with those two writers, and so I talked with them about sort of what it would take, and for a long time it was going to be a Kickstarter, and so we brought on Alyssa Grant, who I'm talking about her like she's not here, but she's like 3 feet to the left. You can't see it.
Yeah.
It isn't that type of camera.
Yeah. Well, her natural state is to be behind the camera.
But she's here. Oh, yeah. That's honestly, I think that's what she prefers. That's my guess.
It's like a groundhog.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Well put. But she had actually worked at Wizards for a while, and she had worked on books like Folos, and had a real sense of what it would take to sort of orchestrate.
Yeah, she's seen
the book content. Yeah, exactly. So it's such a perfect fit. But we had so many other things that we wanted to do, and finally having a project manager role at the company, like we spent maybe the first year mostly working on, like mostly completing and executing other cool projects. So we didn't have a chance to get back to that, but it was always sort of there.
Yeah, it was in the pipeline someplace.
Exactly. And then once we had a chance to focus a full year on it, we had gone quite a bit of the way down, and we had hired Alyssa specifically to operate a Kickstarter, which is a thing that happens.
It is.
I mean, if you look at like Colville went out there and murdered it with Strongholds and Followers.
For real.
A lot of that, a lot of content in there. I mean, there's some similarities, I think, to what we're doing with the AI book, but not really. There's probably some overlap between the two books, but aside from the fact that they would have both been kickstarted, I mean, that would be the main overlap. But while we were getting pretty deep into that process, and we talked to Wizards about, said we're really excited about this project. This is what we're doing. Yeah. We were deeply startled, when they suggested that we try to basically collaboratively make the book.
Which is crazy because this is the first of its kind for 5th edition, at least, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you
does it pain you to dwell on that?
No, if you go back and look at, because there's definitely books that are in the 5th edition era that have a lot of third party.
Okay.
That have a lot of third party support.
Okay.
Inside them, right?
Right.
But something like this, no, this is weird.
This is way bigger.
Well, and it's actually relatively complex, and it indicates a profound degree of trust, because if you have to think about what Acquisitions Incorporated means in this thing, this is an IP that is contained inside of another IP. Because the modern, think about that, like for lack of a better term, it's a kind of fan fiction. Right?
Yeah, eventually.
Like any home game,
right?
We're taking some base materials and we're going to go where we're going to go with them. And it's like it wasn't always. I mean, obviously, when it very first started, it was somewhere else. It wasn't in the Forgotten Realms yet.
Right. It was just somewhere.
But it's been in the Forgotten Realms for a while.
Yeah, ever since Jim's house landed you there.
Exactly right. And so it's been really like to be extended that trust and like that responsibility. Rising to that obviously is...
Yeah, it's exciting and humbling at the same time, I imagine.
It took some doing.
Yeah.
It took some doing. But I could not be more pleased with how it turned out. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, that's there. More books, ostensibly. I assume more books are being printed now. That seems like how it would go.
It seems a shame just to have the one. Yeah.
I don't think they just made the 2 books and then it's like, wow, it's good. It's like we did our best on that one.
So when does this come out?
June 18th.
June 18th. So that's pretty soon.
It is not far. It's a month.
Can people still pre-order and get the green flame pin?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So that's just store.penny-arcade.com. There is a fancy pin that you can get basically as a pre-order gift.
Yeah, with everyone's favorite color, flame.
Oh yeah. Chartreuse.
Mauve.
Yeah.
Okay. Jerry, thanks so much for talking. I know we got to go. We've been chatting for a while, but
that's terrible.
I know, isn't it?
Did you even get to any of the shit you wanted to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
We're not here to talk about like your favorite Bordeaux. We're here to talk about.
I mean, listen. Let's start a podcast.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
My cellar. But I mean, because I'm seeing a lot of questions here. You want to talk about the roles and stuff?
Well, I mean, if we want to go super brief, like, could you introduce the roles in the game for
yes.
Documancer, Decisionist?
Roles. Croissants.
Croissant?
No. So.
But then you had these other ones that you had occluded for a while, and they slowly teased out.
Yes, and then I'll let you go. Okay. But basically, so you have your class, right? And
now he's like focused.
You have your class. You have your class and your wraith.
Your wraith.
In Dungeons and Dragons, and so we have a slightly different role that attaches on top of that, which is something like your job in the franchise. So that's different from like your stats, like how you hit a goblin.
Right.
This is functionally speaking your responsibility, except the difference is that in Acquisitions Incorporated, along with this responsibility comes a specific arcane tool alongside some things that your franchise is going to need and unique ways that you can help your friends succeed as a franchise and individually. So we call those the corporate roles, basically. Was that the term we eventually had?
Corporate roles?
Iconic positions.
Yeah,
positions.
Company positions. Something like that. You'll see it's in there.
Yeah.
It's called a few different things over the time, but essentially, if you're familiar with the C team at all, there are, like Documancer is essentially a kind of mystic bureaucrat. And a decisionist is someone who has to make hard decisions when the path isn't clear, essentially. But there's a few other really whacked out ones.
Like occultants.
Like an occultant.
Yeah, and obviator?
Yeah, occultants and obviators. Obviators are like something like witchers, I guess, would be a good way to do it. But essentially, they're people... they're individuals of immense study,
right?
And they train for they train for those things you can't train for, essentially. And so they have amassed a profundity of wisdom about threats,
right?
And that profundity of wisdom about threats tends to sort of change who you are as a person.
Yes.
But occultant, loremonger. Any one of those roles essentially has 4 ranks of capability that grow along with the franchise. And these abilities are granted to you by virtue of the fact that you're an employee in good standing and you have access to an expertise with an arcane tool. And those things just get layered on top, and they're designed in such a way that they make playing the game easier.
Yeah, I think so. It's a really interesting way to look at a character, because the background is what you used to do, and these roles are now what you do now.
That's very
so
well
it's almost like a super background.
No, I have literally used this term. It is basically like a super background. It's a foreground. Something like this. But that's the takeaway, is that those are responsibilities, and one of the other things is that I think that it would really help. Any D&D player is going to find new capabilities interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I really, really do think that they can shine, especially with new players, because when you're sitting at that table, like, knowing what you're supposed to do can be very challenging. But the job hierarchy task framework, that's something that we understand, implicitly, and I think that is an interesting sort of tactical tool for the dungeon master to deploy.
Yeah.
Especially for a new player. I might use those even if I weren't playing an AI campaign. If I had someone who was new to the game, I might grant them some responsibilities just so that they know, just so that they can relax into a task.
Yeah. And they also work as like narrative-based motivators.
For sure.
So it's another way to hook somebody, their background or who they love and what their secrets are, what their job is. And another way is to pull them different directions.
Yeah, and in the C team campaign, I've definitely used that, especially sort of like internecine competition within a single job type. But it can also be a source of friendship, like Walnut Dawngrass and Doldroma.
Yeah.
They sort of befriend each other over a love of mystic paperwork. So it's really, really fun. Okay, now I'll let you go.
Now
I just saw that you had the thing in there, and I was like, what?
Sure, whatever you want to do. All right, thank you so much to Jerry, and we'll see you guys do hopefully more interviews here at D&D Live 2009.
See ya.
Bye.